Welcome back. It's great to see so many of you dropping onto the gamification leaderboard. I hope you're getting lots of value from the day. Time now for safety technology. Railways in the UK have a long history of making steady progress in terms of technological adoption. Technology, when used correctly, can reduce the chances of human error and greatly improve accuracy across systems designed to keep employees safe. Safety is a very real part of technological changes that must be considered as we embrace transformation. The panel can talk us through what technology is out there, how it's being used, and what benefits it's bringing to the rail sector. So let's welcome our panel. Sam Bemment, Technical and Innovation Manager at the Railway Industry Association. We have Dr. Chris Ward with us, Senior Lecturer in Control Systems Engineering at Loughborough University. Gabriel Stroud, CEO of AssessTech, and Ken Vine, Network Technical Head of Level Crossing Engineering for Network Rail. So do keep on using that live Q&A function, which you've made good use of so far today. It's nice for me to understand the parts of the conversation that you want to know more about and explore in more depth. So great. I think it looks like we've got everybody here. Gabriel, may we start off with you? What
Yes.
is an electronic competence management system?
So, what electronic competence management system? Well, originally when we first started on the railway, competence management was all on piece of paper, and you noted down what the person was like and what they did, and we looked after all of the key things they need to be able to do for a safety critical role, and then we put it in a file and very rarely looked at it ever again. So what we wanted to do was actually use that data properly and mine that data and actually give access to all of that learning to the people who have been assessed. So electronic competence management is essentially all of those pieces of paper with all of the learning and all of the skills of the people in their records in a place where we can access them.
And Gabe, now that data is in the right place, how useful is it for day-to-day operations?
Well, I think because we're relatively new to electronic competence management. It's only been probably in the last 10 years, and it's been about gathering that data. I still don't think we use it effectively as well as we could. I mean, lots of companies now are really getting into their reports and using the data in a proper way that's going to help them, reduce training times, but then what needs to be focused on, what doesn't need to be focused on, risks, etc. But I think there's a bit of a journey to go to actually start using that data effectively yet.
Cool. Sam, let's bring you into the conversation, if we may. What's the Rail Industry Association involvement in railway safety technology?
Our involvement, well, I guess there's no direct involvement, but we're the oldest trade association in the world. We've got nearly 400 members across the entire rail supply chain. So that goes right through product safety, workforce safety, electrical safety, contractor, site safety. So a lot of the traditional stuff that you'd think of as being directly related to safety technology, probably like signaling, right through to some great cutting edge innovations from our members that really do have the possibility to improve safety, perhaps in places you wouldn't think we still have an issue in 2022. Platform trade interface and actually low adhesion detection. That's a hot topic at the moment that I know one of my colleagues on the call, Chris, is working on. He's one of our members.
And what did you think, Sam, to Ian Prosser's comment? I don't know whether you were able to hear all of his presentation a few minutes ago, but saying that we really need to implement technology much quicker.
I think if there's one thing I could change about the railway, it would be the seats on the Class 222s, because I always seem to get a dead leg. But second to that, there's one thing I could change on the railway, it would be our ability to uptake innovation, which is I think what Ian was referring to. So not research and development. We're great at research and development. We've got a world-leading research and development base. But if you have innovation as the uptake of that research and development into business as usual, I think we are slow, we're onerous, there's a lot of blockers on that road. And I think if we could clear all those and get some of that technology that we already have out there faster, we could really make a difference.
Research leads me nicely on to welcoming Chris to our panel. Chris, what's your background and what kind of research do you undertake?
So I suppose I'm a cliched academic. I've spent most of my life in universities. But most of my research is fundamentally around what I would call control engineering, but that focuses on condition monitoring, fault tolerance, fault detection kind of methods, and primarily the research over the last 10 years has been in the rail industry. So things like mechatronic vehicles, getting them to steer properly, and doing things around condition monitoring. So Sam mentioned about low adhesion detection, which is a current project that I've got with Network Rail at the moment.
And is it an area that you really enjoy?
Yes, it is a strange life being an academic, but yeah, it's you get to choose your direction mostly if the money's there. But yeah, I always describe it as sort of playing for a living, because we get to explore lots of different concepts that you probably wouldn't have the time, or you'd be under the pressures to do those in industry.
Yeah,
but hopefully with a focus of application. We don't do these things in a vacuum either. It's generally driven by what we perceive as demands from industry.
Yeah, so very satisfying, I would imagine. Ken, welcome to you as well. About your role at Network Rail and how the technical authority fits with the rest of the organisation.
Right, hello. The technical authority works with the regions and routes. My aim in life is to deliver out to the people in the regions and routes policies, standards, technologies that meet their needs.
Fantastic. And what are the main challenges, Ken, that you're facing at the moment?
Cost at the moment. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, we're under continuous cost pressure. We know and acknowledge that a lot of our renewals work costs too much. We're working hard to try and get those costs down by understanding our processes better and by introducing new technologies, which these days are often not railway specific. The cost of developing some new complex technologies is huge. So if we can use COTS equipment that other sectors use already and put money into, that's a really positive way forward for us.
Yeah, it's going to make a big difference for you, isn't it? Gabriel, how does the data that we discussed at the beginning make a difference to individuals?
Well, I think gathering the data, the thing we always wanted to do was to provide individuals with a clear record of their competence and the data that's been gathered. And we've introduced a grading system within competence management, so the candidates could then focus on what they needed to learn rather than everything they got right, which is good and in the bag. It's actually which bits are important, which risks do I need to look at this morning before I go to work. And
so therefore it's essential, isn't it, that people do have access to those competence records?
So, I mean, this is the thing. We've been, every single person should be able to access their records at any time. On a paper, they could have gone in and asked for them at any time. But since we went electronic, they should be able to access them whenever they like. So that if they were at home or at the weekend, they could actually then look at it, look at their competence, find out where they want to learn. But unfortunately, it's not always easy for them to access their records. So we have to work. I think there's a journey to go on for them to have access all the time to their records. Now we've got internet. It should be easy.
And just a quick question, Gabe, from the floor, actually, on that point from Fraser. How do you ensure that electronic competency records and the individual safety and incident history data is not lost and transferred across to another operator when they change jobs or move to another company, drivers, for instance?
So how do we ensure that the data isn't lost?
Yeah, that it's moved on to.
I think that's really important, especially with GB Railways coming up, that we actually have an integrated system where records can be transferred, and we've got that ability to transfer records of drivers. Obviously, the driver has to give permission, and the company has to permission, and all that sort of thing has to be put in place with GDPR, etc. But that's very important. We should be transferring records of incidents and records of competence across with that driver.
Chris, can the safety culture, do you think, be perceived as a barrier to innovation?
I've got to be very careful how I answer this here. I mean, the rail industry has an outstanding record in terms of safety. You compare it to any other industry, and it's outstanding. I think it probably goes back to the question you had with Sam earlier in terms of the length of time it gets to get innovation out there. And there can be, again, got to be careful saying this, can be a lot of naysayers in terms of you can't do that because of this, this, and this. And so that can be sort of a perception barrier sometimes. Particular things that I play around with, you mentioned electrical system, they go, oh, that's going to break, your sensor's going to do this, and your system's going to fail. But it's it's a process that a lot of other industries have been through before. You look at aerospace or automotive, they have increasingly mechatronic systems. I think the railway is going in that way. I think the perception is changing, but it is getting through the test phase. We can do a lot of things in terms of simulation. We can do things in the lab, but everything that I've ever done on the railway is incredibly difficult. I mean, probably rightly so in terms of the safety case, but it makes things costly. It slows things down. And a lot of the time it can stop things as well. We've had test plans in the past that we thought were going to happen, but they get killed because of something that I wouldn't perceive as a risk, but the industry might do.
So how could we tackle this perception?
I think we're getting better as a partnership between academia and industry, and it has to be a partnership, and there has to be a perception of what we're suggesting is actually worth, it's actually going to make a transformative difference. And I think that's what we're quite good at in universities, is thinking of not just today's problems and solving them, but thinking in the long term. And if there is a big transformative change, then systematically working with the industry. I mean, UCRIN, the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network, is very good at that, and that we've got these stronger partnerships with industry now. But I think that's I mean, aerospace went through it with fly-by-wire. You basically had to have some key people within industry who really, really wanted it, who drove it forward against the naysayers, that it is a long-term thing and it's a long-term partnership. But like I say, I think it's getting better. I think we are working much better with industry these days.
Sam, where do you see safety technology moving in? I know it's moving at a great pace, but in the next kind of 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. So I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that, I guess, in a passenger general public sense, we're actually very good. And in terms of workforce safety, I mean, sadly, there's been a few incidents, even within my memory, but we've come a long way, and we saw that on the debates this morning. I think the big thing I would predict a change in will be the level of autonomy and automation that we see in things in the near future, and also condition monitoring as well. So if you look at automotive, for example, we've had onboard diagnostics in cars since 1980s. Initially just 1 or 2 sensors. Now you can plug a reader in, a Bluetooth reader, for £20 into your car, and it will tell you, component lifetimes on the entire vehicle. And you might not think that's a safety technology, and on a car maybe it isn't. But if you look at the railway, you need to put boots on ballast to go and replace components to fix things that are broken. And every boot you take off the ballast is an opportunity for a safety saving, essentially, isn't it? And let me be clear, that's not artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence, it's a bit of a buzzword for me. Your car generally doesn't have AI. It's got a sensor and a threshold. It's quite simple. But I think one key thing about that is that it can't come at any cost. Just as Ken mentioned a moment ago, we are under cost pressure. We can't be going throwing sensors on everything, having huge data centers. We've got to be very careful about what we instrument up.
Ken, how have your recent experiences been with introducing new safety technology?
I'll sum it up in 5 words. It's hard. It's really hard.
Go on. Can you give us any examples to sort of explain what it's been like?
I think Chris summed it up well, really. It needs to be a partnership. The naysayers will sniff and say, that won't work here, mate. You need a really strong relationship with the client. So in my case, Network Rail, between the client and the supplier, to make sure that you're solving the right problem. And you need to accept the reality that the railway is not a very compliant place. What works well in the workshop or the lab will probably struggle to start with the realities of railway life. Horrible climate for 365 days of the year. It's either too hot or it's too cold or it's too wet. We're working hard to get innovative technology in. We work particular examples. We've been working with a couple of suppliers for years on novel train detection, and it just takes a long time. It needs clever people and a really clear understanding between the client and the supplier as to what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, Gabriel, I saw you nodding away there when Sam was talking, and I'm sure some of it resonates with you as well, does it?
Well, with any technology that comes in to the railway, it's always different when you actually implement it on the ground, when hundreds of thousands of people start to use it, and where the weather happens and when this happens. And there's so many things that you can't foresee until they actually happen. But what we have to do is respond to them quickly, respond to them in a proper way, in a way that's actually going to sort them out, rather than just put a patch on them.
And Gabriel, is there a risk that kind of de-risks the safety critical staff in any way?
Oh, so this has always been my thing. The more technology we put in, like a train driver now is a much quicker route to becoming a train driver, which is good, but it's also not so good, because I do like the old school where the driver really drove the train, knew the physics, knew the weight, different passengers, when the train's empty to when it's full, different conditions, and they drove it. I felt they drove it better. I might be wrong, it's my perception. But I think sometimes that we can rely too heavily on technology, and then the risk is we de-skill our staff. And we don't need to do that. We can have both, but we need to not just rely on the technology to, and then maybe dumb down our staff.
Chris, do you agree with that?
Probably not. I mean, I think all industries go through a certain level of automation. There's always the risk of, people perceive this risk of de-skilling workforces. And I think it goes the opposite way. You actually have to upskill your workforce to be able to manage these systems. I'm not a human interface person, but the more you bring in automation and the more that you become systems managers, there's always a trade-off between those things. But you don't want people just falling asleep watching stuff. And so that transition is difficult. But you look at aerospace again, there's lots of automation. Most people don't fly the aeroplanes. There's systems in there to stop people doing daft stuff. For me, the more you take humans out of the loop, generally the safer systems become. I hope it's not too controversial a thing, and I do think it's an upskilling thing, because they are more complicated systems. But you need to take the workforce on a journey with you. It's not a threat to them. It's about making the system better and actually providing them with a better life, or a better career in the end.
And Chris, what do you see as the sort of yet to be adopted or accepted innovation that excites you most about potentially increasing safety over current practice?
I can only repeat what Sam said, is this sort of increased levels of automation, stopping people being exposed to big bits of metal, flying them at 100 miles an hour, getting them off the track. More automatic driving. I know that's going to be a difficult conversation with drivers, and some of the stuff that I play around with fault tolerance, if we have more of these kind of automated systems. So I think it's a general creep. But a lot of other industries have been through this and managed that process.
Yeah, and Sam, do you want to follow on from that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I hear the argument a lot that other industries are making big strides with regards to safety, and people cite automotive and they cite aviation. But I think it's very different use cases, very different investment timeframes, and also the industries are held to very different standards. If rail was held to the standards of automotive, we could have autonomous trains tomorrow. And just like Tesla, we'd start finding all of these corner cases where, oh, sorry, I didn't see that lorry parked across the track, and then you start injuring and killing people. And as rail, we don't want that. And I'm proud to work in an industry where we don't do that. We do it better. You could make the same argument with the 737 MAX and the sort of regulatory issues around that. I mean, we have principles now, Victorian principles from signalling, that are still keeping people alive every single day on our railway. It doesn't mean we can't go back and revisit them and see if there's a better way to do that with technology. Perhaps this call isn't the place for discussing rejigging signalling principles. I think the big thing that those industries have that we don't is a place to demonstrate technology. So if you are Tesla, you can build 5 Teslas and you can, rent an airfield and drive your cars around in circles and see if you crash them. If you're Boeing, you can build 2 or 3 737s and you can fly them in circles. As a railway industry in this country, we have test tracks where you can shake down your individual technology and you can test it and prove it in a railway environment and say, look, my widget functions. But we don't have anywhere that is an operational demonstration railway where we can stick all these things together and put the business case together for adopting the new technology. And I think that's what we need.
Yeah, Ken, would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, very much. There's in my world, We have signalling asset managers who are hard bitten and they want to be convinced that something works before they commit to it and put it on their bit of railway.
It's very difficult to go first. It's very easy to go second with that proof already there. So we need to enable people to go first with somewhere to demonstrate that technology.
Question from the floor, perhaps for you, Ken. I don't know, perhaps you can take this for me. Emma says, what could be done to push technology systems that already exist to enhance the safety of our colleagues, e.g. Sentinel, Lookout, Lone Worker, things like that?
I think it's careful introduction and careful monitoring so you can see the benefits and demonstrate the benefits.
I think, Gabriel, we're just talking about other sectors, and Sam was talking about the car industry or other mobility industries. But how do we compare railway-wise to other companies in other parts of the world, do you think?
So I think in terms of infrastructure and equipment, I think we've inherited a Victorian railway because we're the first ones who put one together. So we lack the space. Our railway's not going to change. It has bridges, it has all the roads, it has everything that's there. So we are we will advance our technology, but it will be a bit slower than other countries. Other countries, you go to Saudi Arabia, into Riyadh and to SAR, and their infrastructure is amazing. They've got very different issues. They've got a lot of sand that goes everywhere and all sorts of things that happens. But you look at their infrastructure and their machines and you see their state-of-the-art technology, and it's amazing. It's like mind-blowing. I think we are leading the industry in terms of competence and looking after people's competence and managing that data and starting to look at how that's going to affect people and how we can actually upskill the people and point them in the right direction to use the technology. I agree with Chris when you said where is the end? Where is the end? Is it automated trains? And maybe not. I'm not sure. I certainly think that drivers have got there's still a long time for a driver to be driving a train as we go forward, and especially in Britain, I think because of I think it's space. Space is what we have an issue with.
Well, also, I suppose, because, as you say, we kind of invented the railways, didn't we? We were pioneers. So I suppose all that Victorian infrastructure, we were sort of world leaders now. And I suppose the challenge is how we can continue to be world leaders and embracing new technology and innovation, whilst the fact we can't just build a brand new system everywhere. Chris, how can academia and the rail industry work better together to see new ideas brought in perhaps a more timely fashion, do you think?
Well, I can only repeat what's been said before. I mean, the early engagement, the partnership with industry, making sure that we are having that forward view because we've got the time and the space to think in a slightly different way. But again, and it's what everyone said here, it's the testing. We can do a certain amount in labs, we can do a certain amount in constrained test sites, but the valley of death is definitely there. There's so many things that we do in universities which are really exciting. Sam and I have both worked on a different way of doing track switching, which would bring huge safety benefits as well as operational benefits, but it's been an incredibly difficult process to get that forwards, and it's getting it in the ground. It's an expensive process. There's no one route for it. There's always different cost models. Trying to sort all that out and to push these things forward. It's that fundamental test and proving to guys in the industry that this is actually worth doing and worth taking that perceived risk to employ it.
Sam, that sounds a source of frustration to Chris. Is it equally as frustrating?
I think there's more than one valley of death. I think there's several valleys. In fact, we're basically in the Lake District as far as innovations control. There's valleys of death everywhere. So I think the valley of death for me that's never really talked about is the sort of innovation through to business as usual valley of death. So our members, they're innovating. They're coming up with novel products, services. They're co-investing. They're ready to do things better, faster, cheaper. But often find at that point where they want to go and demonstrate their first item, get it out there on track. Even if they have their own funding to put it on track, there's no motivation from inside the asset owner, or the product sponsor architecture doesn't allow them to get that product into service to demonstrate it. It's very frustrating. I think the government sent a clear signal with sort of the CP6 R&D settlement that went to Network Rail, very welcomed by us at RIA, and we really see the advantage of that. But at the same time, supply chain was a little bit of cut out of that, so our expertise wasn't really taken advantage of as part of that, and we'd like to see in CP7 the opportunity for our members to get involved, because they've already invested, they've already come up with things, and they're ready to go. And
you're actually at Westminster today, aren't you? Or in Westminster?
We are indeed, yes. We're at RIA Parliamentary Reception just over the road.
Question from the floor. Perhaps Ken can help me here. Masood says, has the fragmentation of railways affected the uptake of new technology? What do you reckon, Ken?
I think sadly, yes. We do try to take all the parts within the rail industry with us, but it's difficult, and sometimes the fragmentation can lead to a multi-headed attack from people. So you end up with several people trying to solve the same problem, whereas it might be better if we could be more coordinated and solve one problem quicker.
Yeah. And what are you doing, Ken, to help the teams within Network Rail manage their assets better?
Very, very keen on RCM, as has already been mentioned. It's fantastic. It provides us with immediate asset information so we can prevent failures from occurring. It provides us with longer term asset information so we can understand the condition of our assets and prioritise or deprioritise renewals. And we're also keen on remote monitoring of usage of level crossings. We actually know really little about what happens at our level crossings, and with remote monitoring equipment, we can get a much richer picture of who's using it and when. So yeah, it's a real growth area that I'm pushing as hard as I can.
And just one more question from the floor. Again, Ken, might be suitable for you, from Martin. Martin says, do you think the advent of Great British Railways will enhance or inhibit innovation as it effectively reduces the number of potential customers, which historically has limited innovation?
Yeah, I think we've got to make it positive. The closer the links we have between track and train, the easier it is to progress innovation.
Gabriel, we are coming towards the end of our debate. Having listened to everyone said on the panel, any final thoughts for us?
Fine. There's a final thoughts on all of that. I think what we have to do is just, if we continue to research, we continue to develop new technology, continue to be bold, to put it into place, to sometimes step out at the front and lead. That's what we need to do, because sometimes a really good idea can come out of something when lots of people will go, as Ken said, it's not going to work, but sometimes it does work. And actually be bold, I think, is the way forward, and actually put yourself out there.
Sam, being bold and putting yourself out there?
My version of being bold is radical innovation, and we've done it really well in the past in this country. We've exported things all around the world. We've brought billions of pounds back to our economy. There isn't currently a path to do that in UK Rail, and I'd like to see a path created. And I think we are missing a trick with GBR if we can't provide a proper R&D and innovation function that is for the whole railway as a system. We need to do that.
Chris, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And it's, us in academia, we need to be pushing against an open door, to use a cliche. We need to know that there's a receptive audience for it out there, and that we're not just, we have to prove that these ideas are worth it, but there has to be a marketplace for it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. As always, another really engaging panel with so much covered. So thank you to all of my guests there, and thank you to everyone who's joined us so far this morning. Make sure you take advantage of what the platform has to offer all the time, scoring points with our gamification tool. Those in first and third places will get to donate in their name to the Magic Breakfast or more trees. It's worth me sharing too that by jumping into the meeting hub, you're building connections with delegates, not only for this event, but you'll have the opportunity to connect with delegates who sign up for future events too. So let's meet back here at 2 o'clock after a well-deserved break and some lunch. I shall see you then. Oh, I just need to keep an eye out.